get my shoes and out the door. 5, I'm alive. 6, 7, 8, feeling great.
Hello, BYWG tribe. This is Dr. Noah. Here's a quick peek at our supplement, product, and book of the month for April 2020. At the end of the podcast, I will spend a few minutes going into further detail, so we encourage you to listen to the end. The supplement of the month for April is actually our immune system support bundle that includes 1 bottle of Immune Boost, 1 bottle of Stress Rebalancer, and 1 bottle of Vitamin D3 Boost. We are extending our 15% off and free shipping through the month of April. Our book of the month is a frequent guest, Dr. Kelly Ann's Cleanse and Reset. And our product of the month is the Magic Spoon. Man, do I love Magic Spoon. It's the world's first low-carb, high-protein, keto-friendly breakfast cereal. All the links, discount codes, and special offers for the product, supplement, and book will be listed in the show notes and iTunes, posted on social media, in our weekly newsletter, and on our website at www.beyondyourwildestgenes.com at the Listen Now tab. Thanks for listening.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Beyond Your Wildest Genes podcast for this week. I am Dr. Wanda Lee, and I'm hosting this episode with my guest, Dr. Patrick Gentempo, the author of Your Stand is Your Brand. Dr. Gentempo is a passionate person about the use of philosophy as a practical tool for success and achievement. His unique perspectives have captured worldwide attention. His TEDx talk, Unleashing the Power of Philosophy, is a must watch, and we'll have those links in the bio. He is a chiropractor, an entrepreneur, and a longtime student of health and wellness, both practically and philosophically. One common quote attributed to Patrick: "Everyone has a philosophy. The only question is whether they know it or not." He lives in Park City, Utah with his wife Lori and 3 children. I'm proud to say he's been a great friend to myself and my husband Andrew, and a longtime mentor to our entire group of doctors here at BYWG. So welcome, Patrick.
Hey, thanks for having me. Really great to be with you.
So one thing that probably some people are thinking as they're listening to this is, Your Stand is Your Brand. That sounds like a business book. What does that have to do with Beyond Your Wildest Genes and health? And for those people who have been listening for a while, you know that we treat health really as part of your job, your self-responsibility, and the choices that you make are yours. And what's interesting about the choices that we make is they really have a lot to do with how we see the world and the things that we value. So I think talking about philosophy and values, which is a huge part of your book, is pretty important. What do you think, Pat?
It is, and you in my introduction, which was very kind, thank you. You mentioned a quote that is usually repeated very often: is that everybody, you who are hearing my voice right now, you have a philosophy, and that philosophy is driving your choices, actions, and outcomes, whether you know it or not. So the practical application of philosophy in life is really critical. It can change your life, save your life, etc. And most especially that applies in health. And when you look at the circumstance we're in the world with the pandemic, people are confused, and for good reason, because there's a lot of conflicting information that's being disseminated. Yesterday I spent a lot of time in literature review, looking at a lot of the research literature, and simultaneously looking at headlines in the news media. And it's like a tale of two cities. These things don't at all equate to each other. And now, if you're the average consumer out there, the average person out there trying to figure out what's going on and trying to gain some context so you can figure out what you might want to do, you're going to have a really tough time. So I think you have to get into some fundamental, some fundamental premises or some fundamental views of reality that you work from to be able to decide how you're supposed to show up right now in the world, and then proceed forward. So it's a really challenging time, and a very important time that people start to self-reflect and decide what their personal philosophy is, especially when it comes to health.
Well, and that's one of the thoughts that struck me when I was reviewing your book this morning, getting ready for this talk, is, when we talk to patients about health, or when we talk to clients about health, we talk to our friends or our family, one of the questions that people will ask is, what do I need to do? And like you're saying right now, in the midst of this pandemic, which is so confusing and so overwhelming for so many people, the common question is, what do I need to do? But maybe the question is, who do I need to be?
Yeah, that is, for me, that has been, the guidepost for so many of the interviews I've been doing and the lectures I've been giving. It's exactly what I'm telling people. I have a fairly large audience. I don't say it to self-aggrandize, but just to say that I got a lot of incoming traffic coming to me. Where people saying, what should I do? Should I be doing this? Should I be doing colloidal silver? Should I be doing, extra vitamin C? Should I be doing, vitamin D3? Should I be, taking this, taking that? All kinds of questions about what to do when it comes to their economics, their finances. Should I be liquidating my accounts? The market has crashed. It's really, the questions are mostly in health and wealth right now relative to this whole pandemic. And my response has been consistently, you're asking the wrong question. The question isn't what do you need to do right now? The most important question is, who do you need to be right now? Because who you need to be is going to inform what you're going to do. So as I like to say, it's the who before the do. And sometimes maybe people don't quite understand that question. What do you mean? Who do I need to be? And it's literally asking the question, how do you need to show up right now? Are you a business leader? Are you a doctor? Are you a parent? Are you responsible for children? Are you a 20-year-old just out of college and you've got no other responsibilities? Who do you need to be right now in the midst of all this? And that's going to dictate, what the outcomes are going to be. We certainly have an extraordinary amount of health challenge, that there's certain things that people can do to create more health assurance for themselves. There's also economic challenges that are somewhat unprecedented. There's people who are out of work, people who have seen their incomes drop, people who've seen whatever retirement accounts they've had, just suddenly, evaporate to a large extent. And you can either freak out and you can go hide, or you could run, or you can start to get some context, because I can tell you we're in the midst of the biggest wealth transfer, I think, in the history of humankind right now. And the people, and I'm not saying, this is not about being opportunistic and trying to buy a bunch of hand sanitizer and resell it at a higher price. I'm talking about that literally the markets are shook up, and that people with level heads who have a certain set of values and they have a vision that they'll move toward can take action right now that can lead them to higher ground. And the same thing is true about health. There's people, because if you think about this for a moment, I was interviewed on a multiple health podcasts just in the last week, and people start asking the questions. Well, I hear, nebulizing, hydrogen peroxide, could be really effective for a COVID infection, which is true. And I hear that colloidal silver, or maybe I hear gargling with zinc, and all these things have, in my mind, some validity. They help to boost immunity and all that kind of good stuff. Certainly, I'm an extraordinary advocate of chiropractic, and that people should be getting adjusted right now. And it's unfortunate because I'm a chiropractor, but I don't practice anymore. My businesses and enterprises don't have me in private practice. So nobody's going to take an adverse action against me, a regulatory board. But I can tell you that chiropractors in many places are being prohibited from being able to even talk about the relationship between the nervous system immunity and the chiropractic adjustment, for which there's an enormous amount of really solid science that exists. So certainly I advocate people, I see chiropractic as an essential service right now, and people should be getting chiropractic adjustments. But ultimately, beyond all of those things, here's the thing that people have to recognize, which is much more fundamental. It's like, again, who do you need to be right now? Well, we're told to quarantine. We're told, and again, my friend Michael Burnoff pointed out, that's a pretty negative word. When words have frequency, words have vibration, words evoke an emotional response in your body. The word quarantine conjures up pretty dark and bad images. So if you say, I'm under quarantine, I'm forced to be quarantined, what have you, That's a bad thing. So if you're saying, hey, I'm self-isolating for a while, it's a little bit of a different thing. We're not social distancing, we're physically distancing. Socially, I'm very connected right now. I mean, I'm speaking with people through Zoom, looking at their faces, having conversations. I'm physically distant from them, but I'm not socially distant from them. So we gain context in these ways. But why this is important is that in what we're being directed to do, it's the opposite of what we really need in many respects. I'm not saying that having this physical distancing and isolation isn't flattening the curve and helping to prevent the spread of coronavirus, and that it might be a good idea to prevent the overwhelm of our medical systems. But and everybody should understand, eventually everybody's coming out. Eventually people are going to get exposed. They're just trying to limit how quickly people get exposed at one time. So that being the case, what do you really need? Well, if we're going to talk about health, first of all, rest is well, maybe I'll start before that. Fear, anxiety, and worry, those are things that downregulate your immune function. So that's going to actually make you more vulnerable. So stop that. Get into understanding that your body is very, very capable of being able to deal with these varying pathogens that it might come in contact with. It's done it since the time you were born. It's done it since the beginning of the human species walking the earth, and it will do it right now. And how can you support it? Well, you need to rest. You need to lower your anxiety levels. Go out and get into the sun. My mother, who has been indoors a lot, she's in the high risk group, etc. Struggling with her blood pressure spiking a bit, I just told her, get out. I'm not saying you got to go be in where other people are. Go sit out on your porch and get into the sun. Her blood pressure dropped 12 points because she sat out in the sun for half an hour. There's these varying things that you can do, breathing fresh air, etc. That even though you want to create this physical distancing, you have to get to the fundamentals of what your body thrives on and how you can upregulate your immune system rather than downregulate it through the medicalization of your experience and sterilization of your experience to a point where you're not getting rest, you're not getting sun, you're not getting fresh air. These are very simple things that we all need in our life right now. So, when I talk about taking a stand, or your stand is your brand, I'm really just taking a stand on people being self-empowered, having more confidence in their body and its ability to deal with the circumstance, to not give in to fear and panic and isolation, to, if you're going to be physically distanced, don't be socially distanced, connect with other people. And the last thing I'll say, because I know this is a little bit of a rant, is that if I've learned nothing else from the coronavirus, I learned how connected we all are. We're having this conversation, Wanda Lee, you and I, on this podcast, and there's people around the world that can and will listen to it. If you look at coronavirus, think about it for a moment. This is a virus that started in China that has now reached every corner of the earth. I don't care what your race is, your religion, your socioeconomic levels, or how remote you live in the world, it reached you. It's everywhere. And that happened with us intentionally trying to separate and break connection amongst us. The reality is we are all inextricably connected. And my premise around this is that rather than me thinking about this connection that I have with you who are listening to this right now, and thinking and having a worry or a fear or an anxiety around the fact that you might infect me, my preferred response is I am now realizing and recognizing the connection we all have, and my preference is to acknowledge and celebrate that connection, not fear it. And through that connection, if we can spread optimism and hope as compared to pessimism and anxiety and fear, I think the outcome of this is going to be a better world, not a worse world.
I agree. That's something that we've had a few conversations about with some of the live streams that Mike and Noah and myself we do on Thursdays. We've talked about this a few times. Is the opportunities that this time is bringing for a lot of people. opportunities to maybe slow down and take a look at some of their habits that they'd fallen into the busyness, and maybe they were less physically distant, but maybe even more socially distant when we were all busy running around doing stuff instead of stopping to pay attention to those connections that we have with people. We may not physically be in the same room, but I would say I'm more in touch with most of my closest friends since this has happened because we all have more time. And so there's always a positive side to these crises if you're willing to stop and look at that. So with BYWG,
and that's the key.
Yeah, it's the key. With BYWG, we try to really focus the fact that health is that three legs of a stool: the physical, the chemical, and the emotional. And in a time like this, there's nothing more obvious than how connected those three things are.
No doubt. And this is, like I said, a lot of times people are looking for deep, dark, complex solutions, that are protocols that are very involved, and certainly they exist. And there's all kinds of things I could cite right now that a lot of people are speaking to out there already. But sometimes we're losing the forest for the trees, and just like I said, I think the big picture matters first. And the big picture is things that I don't care if it's the coronavirus pandemic or if it's life on Earth, without it, these things become important. But this is the ultimate look in the mirror. I believe a lot of people are now getting more introspective and taking stock and thinking about life, as you had cited. For me, listen, I haven't been home for this stretch of time without traveling, because I've traveled millions of miles through. I do a lot of lecturing around the world, so my work and my business takes me traveling quite a bit. So I have at this point at least 9 trips that have canceled, and I've been home this whole time with my wife and kids, and it's been a very different, and for me a very beautiful experience. I say that with full empathy and recognition of the fact that I know that there are young couples who are living, week to week off their paychecks, who have kids at home living in apartments in cities like Chicago or Manhattan, and they're in a very, very tough circumstance, and I have complete empathy for that circumstance. And in working, actually, a lot of the work we're doing right now is to try to find ways for them to find a path out of that and to get to higher ground. So I'm recognizing the pain in the world right now, but the first step away from it starts with the thought of the possibility that there's a better life in front of me if I can collect myself, decide how I want to show up, and then start moving toward it.
Well, and one of the things with this forced time and this emptiness of our schedules is we do have a little bit more time for maybe some introspection and some reflection on what we do truly value at the end of the day, our core values, or as you talk about it in your book, your Miles Davis.
Mm-hmm.
For those people who maybe haven't taken the time or had the opportunity to sit with themselves with this time, what could you suggest for them in exploring the idea of their core values?
It's an important question, so thank you for that. And I think it's what you're saying with the introspection, the time we have, the space, if you will, to be able to self-reflect. Here's what I'm hearing from a lot of people, and it's not just a few people, a lot of people, is that I recognized now that there's been this massive pattern interrupt that I've been living in the matrix to a large degree. I've been in my routines, my rhythms, my drive, my push, and everything, and I realize that that isn't how I want to live. This is not who I really am. But we start to self-identify with the job we have, which could be gone right now for a lot of people. We start to identify with, the place we live. We start to identify with, the routines that we run on a daily basis, and we do that consciously or unconsciously. But when that all gets interrupted, you start to say, okay, and that's why I asked the question, who do you need to be right now? Is that we start to recognize, oh my goodness, that identity that I assumed was not really who I am in my deeper, more purest expression of myself. And for everybody, we could say, okay, so why, or how are you, what is it? What is the contradiction? What is the thing that the behavior I've had or the routines I've been running that aren't who I really am? And you can go down, pretty much a long list. But here's what I found: there are people who are doing things that they weren't doing before because the space just opened up in their life for them to do it. And I can't tell you how many people have picked up a guitar for the first time in 10 years, sat down at the piano for the first time in 10 years, are reading certain books in certain areas of interest that they completely let go of. So what is this reflective of? It's reflective of what you talk about, your core values. What is it that you truly value? For one big example is time with your family. And of course, a lot of people live in the, hey, I'm a provider, I work every day. A lot of times it's both parents, are providers. They're out working every day, not making time for themselves in a relationship, not making time with their kids. And they're starting to recognize that, wow, I was really unplugged from all this. Of course, the program we run in our heads is that, I'm providing for my family, so I'm doing this for my family, but really not recognizing that they're becoming and have become estranged from their family. They've disconnected from it. And now, what's interesting is we're talking about, again, really more personal things. Even though some people would consider my book a business book, it really is more of a book about who you are and then how you might apply that to your business if you happen to be an entrepreneur. But it applies to any dimension of your life. So I would say now is the time, I guess the long answer to your question, is to sit back and to start to document, and I walk through a process of how to do this, but to start to document what are your core values, meaning we value a lot of things, but the core values are the things we value most. And once I can identify those core values, and it's, that's why the chapter is called Finding Your Miles Davis. What's the purest expression of those values? But you can't know your Miles Davis. You can't express yourself in a pure form unless you first know what your values are. And that's why you have to take the time to go discover them.
Absolutely. And this, is a perfect time for some of that. And it's a chance to kind of be a little more than honest with yourself that, when you've maybe said, well, I value health, but I just don't have time to go to the gym, or
Right.
I just don't have time to cook meals from home. And now that we have that time, we can see where those contradictions might have been living. I read a thing the other day that someone posted, said, I always thought I would do this if I had this time. I have this time, and I realize that's not at all what I want to be doing.
Right.
So uncovering some of those contradictions of what we think we want and what we actually end up doing when we have that chance is sometimes a great lesson in itself.
It's the ultimate lesson. I mean, probably the worst possible thing for a human life. I mean, listen, we all live with the existential angst of mortality, and the fact that we come here, we live, we develop relationships and love and values, and then we're going to die. And so there's this fundamental issue of existence that's been explored by philosophers for all of time, but the thought, or I guess the thing that I want to let people think about is that getting to the later years of your life, and maybe even not the later years of your life, but getting to a point where you have regrets and you're living with regrets, and you can look back. I mean, right now, I don't know what decade of your life is, you who are listening right now, that you might be in, what stage of life you might be in. But I can tell you that one of the saddest things in life is to get to stages of life that you look back on prior years and say, I regret I did this. I regret I didn't do that. I wished I had spent more time with so-and-so. I wished I had taken better care of myself. I wished so many, you can just start to make a laundry list of regrets. And I believe the blessing in what's going on right now is everybody gets to pause for a moment and say, have I been living in a way that's going to cause me to have regrets at some point in my future? And if you can be brutally honest with yourself, and if the answer is yes, this is your real opportunity to make some changes.
Absolutely. So we're coming close to the end of our time limit. Any thought or idea or instruction or opportunity you want to leave our listeners with?
You know, I could tell you that what's been interesting in the feedback from the people who've been reading my book is that they've related to chapter 7 in a big way, which is called creative destruction. And it's kind of interesting because we go on this whole journey in the book, starting in chapter 1, and we're building, chapter by chapter, how to really kind of build this life or even build this business, if you're an entrepreneur. And once you have it all kind of dialed in, wired in, you learned all these things, then the last chapter is basically on how to burn it all down. And if you notice, I call it creative destruction. It's not just a negative destruction to, a nuclear bomb, blow it all, down and radiate it. It's more about saying it's time maybe to take the old and let go of it and burn it down so that something more beautiful can emerge, which is the whole metaphor of the phoenix, right? The phoenix keeps, this beautiful thing emerges, and then it gets up to a certain pinnacle, and then it dips back down into the flames, and then burns all the way down, and then something even more beautiful emerges out of those flames. I give examples in the book, like the Beatles and Beatlemania, and how when the Beatles were at the peak of Beatlemania, and they had, millions and millions of dollars, selling out stadiums everywhere. And what do? They quit. They burn it all down. The whole Beatle brand, their haircut, the suit, the style of the music, burned it all down, and they come out with what many consider to be the greatest album of all time, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and completely reinvented themselves. And because they were willing to continually practice creative destruction, they were able to progress in their life and to do major important things in the world and big things in the world, and why they were the greatest rock and roll band of all time. So the same thing is true for everybody who's listening right now in their life is what can you burn down? It doesn't have to be everything, but are there some things? And maybe sometimes it's saying, you know what, I need to burn the whole thing down and create something new and better. So I would now's a good time to contemplate how to be the phoenix, what there is to burn down, how can you practice creative destruction in your life and create something that's going to be better and serve you on a higher level.
I totally believe that. I believe there's a cycle of everything that, we create, we master, and then we blow it up so that we can move to the next level, or as John DeMartini would call it, the next quantum, or, whatever philosopher or personal development guru I've studied over the last number of years. It all has that same cycle, because that's just the reality of how the world works. And so it's an opportunity right now to experience that. We can all blow up a few things and start over at a better place, the next level, the simplicity beyond the complexity.
Yeah. Well said.
So that is been a wonderful half hour, Pat. Thanks so much for joining me on BYWG podcast. I just love doing these, and I know our listeners have been very loyal over the past 5 years. They really enjoy them as well, and they're shared globally in hundreds of countries at this point. So thanks all of you who are listening, and if you like what you hear, of course, share this with someone you know that you think might benefit from this information. As always, it is free. It's on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, the website, a gabillion other podcast apps. You can pretty much find us everywhere. And while you're on our website, www.beyondyourwildestgenes.com, you can register for our weekly newsletter as well. We have extra things that we pop up in there, as well as our curated health tips every week, special events, special offers, things that we want to share with you. And we do appreciate everyone, including Dr. Patrick Gentempo today, for sharing our passion for creating a healthier world. And we hope you all join us for more next week. So as Dr. Noah always says, be awesome and never unawesome. Thanks.
Hey, it's Dr. Noah, and I'm back. I suspect you loved listening to this week's podcast release. Our book of the month is Dr. Kellyanne's Cleanse and Reset. Detoxify, nourish, and restore your body for sustained weight loss in just 5 days. Dr. Kellyanne Petrucci has been a longtime friend of Beyond Your Wildest Dreams. Check out our newest book. The link to purchase will be in all our emails, social media, and the show notes. Our product of the month is Magic Spoon. In my interweb travels, I noticed a company called Magic Spoon, marketed as the world's first low-carb, high-protein, keto-friendly breakfast cereal, so I decided to try it. I bought the variety pack with flavors blueberry, cocoa, frosted, and fruity. They come in Adventure Time looking like boxes, and we tried them, and I have to tell you, they are awesome. Absolutely delicious, and the cereal never gets soggy. My kids love it too. Definitely a repeat purchase for me. I know you all are looking for a better option than Frosted Flakes, and this could be one for sure. For those of you who are curious, a serving of Magic Spoon has 12 grams of protein and only 3 net carbs, while Frosted Flakes has 2 grams of protein and 20 grams of net carbs. It is sweetened by a unique blend of allulose, monk fruit, and stevia, and they just released mini boxes, great for travel. To support our patient's immune system, we bundled together 3 of our top sellers that are chock full of research-based immune-boosting nutraceuticals and botanicals. The Immune System Support Bundle includes 1 bottle of Immune Boost, 1 bottle of Stress Rebalancer, and 1 bottle of Vitamin D3 Boost. The normal price for these 3 supplements in total is $155. For the month of April, we are extending our 15% off and free shipping, making the total cost $131.75. You can pick this up in the office, or if you're local, or we can send and ship it to you. This includes vitamin D3, maitake, echinacea, glutathione, vitamin A, adaptogens, minerals, and so much more to supercharge your immune system. Recently, we've done a multitude of live streams on this product, and the first podcast of the month for April will be solely dedicated to this bundle, so stay tuned. If you have any questions or comments, please never hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you, and be awesome and never unawesome.